Hey everybody, this is Madden 20 franchise tips and tricks. Let's see what we got going on. We are going to start off here with a franchise with the Buffalo Bills. So we are going to move the Buffalo Bills to a new location. And let's create a new franchise here with a roster that I have already pre-assembled. Basically what I wanted to do is get rid of all of the Bills starters.
Select the team you want to join.
Trade them to other teams for a bunch of backups. So this team is basically just roster fodder, a few backups. You do have to have some minimum requirements on the team, but this is basically a 53 overall team that most likely is
Start
just
your season with recommended
players on the bubble.
If you wish to change roles or adjust
Starting
options,
point is
use the
preseason.
tiles on the left.
We are going to use an owner and a financial mogul. So we are going to take over the team, give them a bunch of money. Apparently something just happened to the team where they lost their owner, was caught in a scandal, and so they lost all their players, all their good players, and they just had a takeover. So you can take over your team here, and we are going to move to Brooklyn. So league settings, you can use all pro. I'm going to take off the trade deadline. So of course we need all this other stuff. I'll take off pre-existing injuries and change that. So we will also take off fill roster. I don't want the CPU to do any of that on my team. Now if you want to move your location but you don't have a bad stadium, you're going to have to change relocation settings, but in this case the Bills have one of the worst stadiums, so easy to relocate. Alright, so we are starting off with the Buffalo Bills. They had apparently some type of scandal or a tragedy. They lost all their players.
Start your week by installing your game plan.
And they lost their franchise, so they have to move. So we are going to Stadium. This is where you can make the decision. As you can see, this is a pretty old stadium. Rating is 11, so that's one of the worst. And we can relocate. They will get back to us of potential places where we can move in week 3 or 4 in the regular season. And one other thing I want to do is change, which I always do, my staff. So we can staff changes, and we can fire some staff here and fire this guy. We're going to keep our coach, and let's hire a new scout that is going to give us an advantage. If you look there where it says offensive line overall, that means we get a discount when we do scouting on that position. So that actually covers 5 positions, so that's probably the best deal. We're going to give this guy a 5-year offer. Of course, he accepts it. Go to our trainer. This guy's world-class regression, so I think that helps with the players in some way. So they'll be less likely to regress. And he accepts that. But we're going to keep our head coach. And we're going to have to make a couple of changes here because I don't like this scheme. And I'm going to use this is where you can change your scheme in here. I'm going to use an offensive scheme, West Coast. Could be a power run or a zone run. And then a 3-4 base. Change the playbook. I like using New Orleans offense. And you can pretty much use any defense here. How about any 3-4 defense? Sean McVay is fine. So we don't need to do anything with marketing or anything. Now this team, as you can see, is 53 overall, but there's no real reason to go in and change anything else because we're moving. We're not going to be using this stadium anymore. And so we have a really terrible team. As you can see, we're going to start off with certainly the worst team in the league. And most of these guys are pretty much just backups or roster fodder. And the defense looks pretty bad as well. Nobody that anybody would ever want to start. In most cases, many of these guys wouldn't even be a backup, really, for most teams. So we're starting off with the worst team ever. And in 1 year from now, I'm going to show you how we can use some tips and tricks to basically create a team that would definitely be a playoff caliber team and have several all-stars at almost every position. So this is what we're going to get started by saving this. Go in here. We're going to use this for Bills. Now we are going to be moving the Bills to Brooklyn. So we create a backup here. So what are we going to do? Well, the first step is go to your free agents. Here we can see that there are definitely some good players available out there. Now I want to take a combination of players here that can start, as well as players who are a little bit younger, like this one, that I can actually develop and may be able to re-sign. So there's definitely some players like that. Now, because of the fact that we decided to start this franchise with no pre-existing injuries, Alex Collins does, as you can see over here, have that little symbol because apparently, if you look at his
player card, here you can see your
card, he's got a broken leg, broken tibia. He's going to be out 8 weeks. Now, I don't think that that's the case. I believe this is actually a suspension. And I think that there's another one here on Bryant. Yeah, this guy. So he's out quite a while too, 24 weeks. So that's pretty much almost the entire season. And I believe that's also for a suspension. Everyone else should not have that symbol on them. And again, so what I'm going to do is go through and pick up players, like if you look at Eric Berry. Now I know, and this would be unrealistic, that probably he's retired or there's something wrong with him, he's injured or something, that's why he's here. But in the game, you have to figure, one of the CPU teams is going to pick him up, so it might as well be me. Now, I can't adjust anything on the years or the salary. It's already preset if you're going to take a player from free agency. So he is a 1-year contract for $5.75 million, 30 years old, so maybe we'll have a chance to re-sign him. But certainly we're getting a pretty good caliber, strong safety by signing a player like this. And there's quite a few players here that I would like to sign. Here's a starting tight end that's certainly reasonable as a starter. And here's another good one, is Cameron Meredith. Is obviously going to be my number one wide receiver and possibly could re-sign him. He's only 26 years old. So basically what I want to do is go through and just find players that have a high enough overall rating to start, as well as players that are younger that I might want to re-sign. One of my self-imposed rules is if I'm going to sign a player on free agency, then I have to be committed to actually using that player for at least one full season before I would be allowed to trade him or get some value for him. So if I want to sign this player, Kelvin Benjamin, I have to make sure that he's going to play on my team either as a starter or a backup. So that's just my self-imposed rule. So I can also go through position by position and just see who might be available that is actually better than who I currently have. So I can just select somebody. I look basically at their age as well as their overall and the scheme fit. And this player looks like good enough. I can even sign Alex Collins because he will eventually be available at some point this season. So good long-term investment because he's younger. And so I can just go through position by position, find guys. Some of these guys are too old, 34, 33, 35. And other ones I can say, well, let's take a chance. Get some of these young players that may actually develop rather than always just going for the highest overall. And I can also look here at the offensive line. Not much there, so it's not like we're getting a bunch of great players. There's really not much. Now some of these guys, for example, this guy's would be good to pick up, I guess, but I know that he's retired, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals do still have his rights, so it's not realistic that I would be able to pick him up. But again, the CPU definitely will. He will end up on someone's team. So I don't see this as unrealistic. I mean, I am playing the game. I have to play against the computer, so I might as well look for guys. Even Jeremy Parnell is a pretty high overall, even though his age is so high. I might be able to use him for 1 year anyway. So I'm going to go through and add these guys to my team, and eventually I will have to subtract players as well because I have to get everything down to 75. And then the next round, if I get it go 2 games into the preseason, I have to get everything down to 53. And then I'll start to progress through the season. And hopefully I don't win very many games because I want to be able to use my draft picks later on at the end of the season. During the off season, I can either trade them or use them to get more picks or get some good players. So I will eventually transform this team, which started off in the mid-50s overall, and hopefully get them up to a team that's maybe in the low to mid-80s in 1 year's time. And again, my self-imposed rule is if I do pick somebody up on free agency, I have to use them. I can't just pick them up and trade them away right, immediately. I have to use them at least for 1 season. So with that, what we're going to do is go to, I'm sure most of you already know how to use the training and how to make your players better and upgrade them. So what we'll do is we'll stop here, and then you'll have to look for episode 2 where we actually start making all the changes. But I'm going to have to play this first season, which I will sim through after I add these free agents to my team. And then we'll see what we're left up with in episode 2, as I also need to make the change to Brooklyn as well. So look for episode 2, and we'll start to see how we transform this team with all of the tips and tricks into a all-pro caliber team at every position. All right, so go ahead and look for episode 2 next.